Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know, uh, lately I've been thinking a lot about building stronger communities. And luckily I stumbled across this really cool handbook called Roots of Resilience. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, Roots of Resilience. It's a classic.
It is, right?
hmm
So I thought it'd be fun to kind of dive into it together today. Specifically, those like core principles and ethical foundations,
Mm.
the stuff that makes a community, really work.
Yeah, the bedrock.
Exactly, the bedrock.
It's interesting because Roots of Resilience kicks off talking about permaculture ethics.
Okay, permaculture ethics.
And you might be thinking, wait, isn't that just about gardening? But it goes way deeper.
Yeah, let's break those down because I think a lot of people, when they hear permaculture, they just think about gardens. But it's care for the earth, care for people, and fair share.
Mhm.
And those are pretty broad principles.
They are. And I think, Roots of Resilience does a great job of showing how these principles translate into building a resilient community.
Okay, to translate that for us.
Well, so like, for example, they talk about the care for the earth principle, right?
Hmm?
And they use the example of the Milpa system in Mesoamerica.
Okay.
So farmers, they plant corn, beans, and squash together. And it's amazing because each plant actually benefits the others in the system.
Wow.
And so, that they help each other thrive.
It's kind of like that symbiotic relationship we see in nature a lot.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps to replenish the soil.
Oh, wow. So it's a closed loop system in a sense.
It is, it is. And they even connect this ancient practice to the transition town movement.
Okay, now that's fascinating because the transition town movement I know is much more modern.
Exactly.
So how do they connect those two?
Well, they show that the transition town movement uses a lot of these same principles, like, for example, the Milpa system, but just on a larger scale.
Okay.
They're trying to create local food systems, they're working with renewable energy, and the idea is to decrease dependence on fossil fuels.
It makes you wonder what other lessons we can take from those ancient systems that we might not even be thinking about today.
So many, so many.
Yeah. So that was care for the earth. Let's move on to care for people.
hmm
How does that play into resilient communities?
Right. Well, the book uses a great example, the Greenbelt movement in Kenya.
Okay. Yeah.
And they focus on planting trees, combating deforestation, but it's really about so much more than that.
So it's not just environmental.
No, it's not just environmental at all. It's about empowering women, it's about creating livelihoods, and it's about really strengthening those community bonds.
Oh, wow. So it ties back to that first principle, that care for the earth principle, because obviously if you're planting trees, you're caring for the earth, but it's also care for the people.
So you're saying they're all interconnected.
They are completely.
That's really cool. Okay, so that brings us to our third one, fair share.
Huh.
What's fair share all about? Fair share is about making sure that everybody benefits from the community's resources, recognizing that there are limits. And one example that they highlight in the book is community seed banks.
Community seed banks. Okay. I think I've heard of those, but I'm a little fuzzy on what they actually do.
So essentially, it's like a library for seeds.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, it's about preserving those open pollinated, non GMO varieties. It's about preventing those corporate monopolies on seeds. And it's about making sure that everybody has access.
So it's not just sharing seeds, but also sharing knowledge and sharing power.
Exactly, exactly.
That's really cool. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our permaculture ethics as a foundation, right?
Yeah.
But what else does Roots of Resilience talk about in terms of like building that strong community framework?
Well, they talk about this concept of a community charter,
Hmm.
which is essentially like outlining the ethical commitments of the community.
So like a constitution, but for values.
Exactly. Yeah, Constitution for values. And so it's a way to make sure that actions align with the community's core beliefs.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we get everybody on the same page when it comes to values?
Well, it's not easy. But Roots of Resilience encourages open and inclusive dialogue where everybody feels heard and respected. And it's not about everyone agreeing on everything, but finding that common ground, finding those core principles that can guide the community towards a shared vision.
So active listening is key here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Not just waiting for your turn to speak, but really trying to understand where other people are coming from.
Yeah, and understanding that, a diversity of opinions is actually a strength.
Okay, so we've got our permaculture ethics as our foundation. We've got our shared values as our compass. What else does Roots of Resilience say we need to really solidify that strong community framework?
Well, they highlight three fundamental principles: participation, equity, and transparency.
Ooh, okay. Those are big ones. But what do those look like in action?
Okay, well, let's start with participation. The book highlights the kibbutzim in Israel. So they have these community assemblies, and they give every member an equal voice in decision making.
So it's like a direct democracy almost.
It is, yeah. And then when it comes to equity, we can look at the Greenbelt movement again. They weren't just planting trees, they were tackling those underlying social inequalities that often contribute to environmental degradation.
So they're saying it's not just about the environment, it's about the social and economic pieces as well.
Right, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
And then for transparency, they look at the Zapatista communities in Mexico.
Okay.
They have these local councils, and all decisions are made transparently.
With open record.
Yeah, with open records and clear accountability mechanisms.
Okay, that's good.
And it's all about building trust.
Yeah. And you need trust, especially these days where information spreads like wildfire.
Mm.
And a lot of it's not true.
Exactly, exactly. And so that kind of leads into another crucial point, which is aligning traditional knowledge with modern contexts.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it's about respecting and integrating indigenous practices alongside our modern innovations.
I love that. Give us some examples.
Okay, well, first we can go back to the Milpa system. You know, this ancient practice based on indigenous knowledge. Modern agriculturalists are now studying it to enhance soil health and productivity.
So the old ways are sometimes the best ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we see this with the Greenbelt movement as well. You know, they combined that traditional knowledge of land stewardship with modern reforestation strategies.
Oh, wow. So they're not mutually exclusive.
No, not at all. And another great example is Curitiba, Brazil.
Curitiba, okay.
So this city is renowned for its urban planning. They have this incredible public transportation system, and they've got green spaces that are actually inspired by indigenous land management techniques.
So they've figured out how to create a city that's both sustainable and resilient
They really have.
by using those ancient techniques.
Exactly, and it's inspiring.
It is.
It shows how much we can learn from the past and how we can apply those lessons to the present to create a better future.
Yeah, it's not about going back to the old ways. It's about learning from them
Exactly.
and integrating them with what we know today.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So we've talked about these amazing examples like Curitiba, Greenbelt movement, and even the ancient Milpa system. But, like, where do we start? If we want to actually build resilience in our communities, what are those practical steps that we can take?
Well, that's where Roots of Resilience really gets into like the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
And they outline this universal design process. And it all starts with observation,
Observation.
which sounds simple enough,
Yeah, it does.
but it's much more than just like casually looking around.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means really immersing yourself in the community, listening to its members, trying to understand those nuances that shape its identity.
So it's not just about seeing what's there, but about understanding it.
Exactly, yeah. They talk about using ethnographic methods.
Ethnographic methods. Okay, that sounds a little academic.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice?
It's like you're a detective, right? You're observing daily life, the rituals, those interactions, you know, even the unspoken dynamics.
It's about picking up on those little things.
Exactly, exactly. But it's a structured way of doing that.
Okay, so how do we keep our observations structured so that we can actually glean insights from them?
Right. Well, the book gives you a framework for this, right? They talk about using tools like detailed field notes, photo documentation, even mapping techniques.
Mapping techniques. Okay, now you've got me interested.
Yeah. Well, one thing they emphasize is resource mapping.
Resource mapping. Okay.
So it's about identifying all the resources.
Okay, so that's like water, land, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those are all resources. But it also includes the financial resources and even, get this, human resources.
Human resources.
Yeah, like skills, knowledge, experience.
Ooh, I like that. So it's taking inventory of everything that the community already has.
Exactly, yeah. It's about recognizing all of those assets.
So we've immersed ourselves in the community. We've observed their daily lives, right? We've mapped all those resources that we have. What's next?
Okay, so then it's time to go deeper and actually hear directly from the people who make up the community.
Right. It's about getting those stories.
Yeah, exactly. And Roots of Resilience talks about the importance of stakeholder interviews.
Stakeholder interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's literally just sitting down and talking to
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, but it's not just asking questions. It's about really encouraging a dialogue. It's about actively listening. And it's about building trust with those community members.
I'm sensing a theme here. active listening.
Yes, it's so important.
It seems to be at every step of this process.
Absolutely. And when it comes to stakeholder interviews, they really stress the importance of open-ended questions.
Right. So instead of leading people to a particular answer, you're letting them share openly.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to understand their motivations, their aspirations, their concerns.
The why behind the what?
The why behind the what, exactly.
Okay, I like that. So we've done our observations, we've done our mapping, we've done those stakeholder interviews. Now we've got all this information. What do we do with it?
Well, now it's time to revisit those permaculture ethics and that idea of a community charter.
Yeah.
It's about clarifying those values and ethical commitments that are going to guide the community's development.
Okay, but how do we make sure that those values are actually shared, not just something that like one person decides?
That's where the collaborative part comes in, right? Roots of Resilience is all about involving community members in every step of the process.
So get people involved.
Yes, get them involved. You can use workshops, brainstorming sessions, surveys. The goal is to gather those diverse perspectives and create a sense of ownership.
Okay, so it's not about saying this is what our values are,
Mhm.
but it's about working together to uncover them.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about finding those common threads that resonate with everybody and weaving those into a tapestry of shared values.
That's a beautiful analogy. Okay, so now we've got those shared values, we've clarified them. How do we move from those values to an actual plan?
That's where the visioning comes in.
Okay.
So, Roots of Resilience encourages communities to engage in this collective visioning process. It's about dreaming big, right?
Yeah.
And imagining that future they want to create together.
Okay, so it's not just brainstorming, it's like directed brainstorming almost.
It is, yeah. And it's about channeling all that creative energy into an actual plan. And they talk about using tools like scenario planning,
Scenario planning. Oh,
where you explore different potential futures,
Yeah.
you anticipate challenges, you identify opportunities.
so it's not just about hoping for the best, it's about planning for the worst.
Yeah, you're thinking about all the possibilities.
Okay, and they emphasize visual representation.
They do, yeah.
So not just writing a bunch of stuff down.
No. Think vision boards, diagrams, even murals.
Okay, so things that people can connect with.
Yes, things that inspire people.
Okay, so we've done the observation, we've clarified our values,
Mm-hmm.
and we've created this shared vision that feels like a good foundation. What's next?
Now we have to move from the conceptual to the practical. So it's time to map and analyze the existing systems.
Okay, so we're getting down into the nuts and bolts here. What kind of systems?
Everything.
Everything.
Resource flows, social networks, power dynamics, decision-making processes.
It seems like we're looking at the community as a whole system.
Exactly, like that complex interconnected web, just like those permaculture ecosystems we were talking about.
Okay.
And they recommend different tools to map these intricate systems.
Like what?
So they talk about social network analysis.
Okay, so like who knows who talks to who influences who.
Yeah, exactly. And then they also talk about ecological assessments.
So how the community interacts with its natural surroundings.
Exactly, yeah. It's about understanding those resource flows, the waste it produces, its impact on the local ecosystems.
So you're saying a truly resilient community is one that's in harmony with nature.
Right, it's all connected.
Okay, so we've done our observation, we've clarified those values, we've created a vision, and now we've mapped those existing systems. What's next?
Well, now it's the fun part.
The fun part, okay.
The fun part, it's time to design solutions.
Okay, I like the fun part.
Yeah, me too. And Roots of Resilience really emphasizes this idea of co-designing solutions and structures.
With the community.
With the community, exactly. It's about bringing people together in collaborative workshops,
Yeah.
facilitating those discussions, working together to design solutions that actually meet their needs and aspirations.
So the community is really driving this process.
They are. And the book actually offers a lot of cool tools for facilitating this.
Okay, like what?
So one thing they talk about is participatory budgeting.
Participatory budgeting.
Yeah, so it's where community members directly decide how to allocate resources for public projects.
So it's giving the power back to the people.
It is. And they also talk about prototyping.
Prototyping. Okay, are we building little models of our community?
Well, not necessarily little models, but it's about creating those small-scale versions of the solutions that you're envisioning and then testing them out.
So before you go full scale, you kind of test it out on a smaller level.
Exactly. And you get feedback from the community.
So it's like that fail fast, fail often approach.
It is, yeah.
You learn from your mistakes.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we've co-designed those solutions, we've built those prototypes, we've gotten feedback. Are we ready to, like, launch this big transformation of our community.
Well, not quite. Roots of Resilience recommends this idea of implementing pilot projects
Pilot projects, okay.
and celebrating those quick wins.
Quick wins, what are those?
So those are those small but impactful initiatives that deliver those immediate benefits and just generate that excitement within the community.
Okay, so for example.
So let's say your long-term goal is to transition to renewable energy, right? A quick win could be organizing a workshop on energy-saving tips for households.
Okay, so it's a step in the right direction.
It is, yeah. It delivers those immediate benefits, like lower energy bills. But it also gets people excited about that bigger vision.
Okay, and celebrating those successes. You're not
Oh.
saying that's important too.
Absolutely. Acknowledge those contributions because that fuels the next stage of the process.
Okay, we've launched our pilot projects. We've had some quick wins. Everybody's excited. What's next?
Now it's time to get a little analytical.
Oh, okay.
Roots of Resilience dives into the importance of monitoring and evaluation.
Okay, so data is important.
It is, but it's not just about crunching numbers. It's about really understanding the impact of your efforts.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, they recommend using simple metrics, storytelling approaches, and capturing those lessons learned.
Okay, break those down for me.
Okay, so simple metrics could involve like tracking the number of people who are participating in community gardens, right? Or the amount of energy that's been saved through efficiency measures. Maybe the reduction in waste through composting initiatives.
So we're looking at the actual numbers.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But then you have the storytelling.
Okay, so that's bringing the data to life.
Yes, exactly. Sharing those personal experiences of the people who've actually benefited from the community's efforts.
So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the people behind the numbers.
It is, it is. And then capturing those lessons learned.
So what worked?
What worked, what didn't work, what could be improved.
What surprised you?
Exactly, yeah.
So it's a constant learning process.
It is, absolutely. And by documenting these lessons, you're not just improving your own process, but you're also creating this valuable resource for other communities.
So we can all learn from each other's mistakes.
Yeah.
This has been so insightful. I'm really enjoying this deep dive. We've talked about the core principles, the steps involved, but I'm really interested to see what Roots of Resilience says about, the big picture stuff, like integrating these systems, scaling those initiatives, ensuring they're sustainable in the long run.
Well, that's where we're headed next.
So we've laid the groundwork, right? We've got those principles. We've taken those practical steps. What does Roots of Resilience say about, like, scaling up, making sure those initiatives are actually sustainable for the long haul?
Okay, well, they emphasize formalizing those structures. So moving beyond those kind of informal efforts.
They're like making it official.
Yeah, establishing clear governance frameworks, those
Yeah.
operational procedures, management systems.
So it's not just a bunch of people doing good work. It's actually like we got a system in place to support that good work.
Yeah, it's like you're building a house, right?
Mm.
You start with a strong foundation, you frame the walls, you add a roof. Eventually, you've got a structure that can withstand the elements.
Okay, so we're building that infrastructure.
Exactly, yeah. But here's the thing.
Right.
Roots of Resilience also stresses flexibility.
Okay, so it's not like set in stone.
No, you don't want those structures to be so rigid that they can't adapt, to the community's changing needs.
So how do you build that flexibility in?
Well, they recommend building in feedback loops, having mechanisms for continuous evaluation, even pathways for like amending those structures as the community, grows and learns.
Okay, so it's like a living document almost.
It is. It is. It needs to be able to evolve.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got those structures in place. We've built in that flexibility. What about scaling up? Like, how do we take these successful initiatives and make sure that other communities can benefit from them?
That's where sharing comes in.
Okay,
So Roots of Resilience really encourages communities to share those proven models.
with each other.
Yeah, with each other, with other communities, help them adapt those models to their own unique contexts.
So spread the resilience.
Spread the resilience, yeah.
I like that.
And they recommend creating toolkits and resources that other communities can use. And they really stress the importance of documentation.
Okay, so it's not like we did this great thing. It's we did this great thing, and here's how you can do it too.
Exactly.
It's like that open source approach.
It is. It is. It's like
Yeah.
sharing the recipe.
So sharing knowledge. Anything else?
Yeah. They also talk about building alliances.
Okay.
So connecting with other organizations, government bodies, even international networks.
So finding those partners that can help you amplify your impact.
Exactly.
Okay, and that brings us to, that really big question, which is sustainability.
Mm.
How do we make sure that all this hard work that we're putting into building resilience doesn't just, fizzle out.
Right. Well, Roots of Resilience offer some pretty interesting strategies.
Okay.
They talk about maintaining institutional memory.
Institutional memory, what's that?
So, documenting those processes, making sure there's a smooth transition of leadership.
Okay, so even when the people who started it move on, the work continues.
Exactly, yeah. And they also emphasize ongoing community engagement. You got to keep people involved.
So it's not just a one-time thing, it's like a constant process.
Yeah, and it's about making sure that people feel empowered and invested in the long term.
So it becomes part of the community's identity almost.
It does, it does. It's like resilience becomes part of their DNA.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Those core principles of resilience, the practical steps, even that bigger picture of scaling up and ensuring sustainability. What are your final takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaway is that building resilient communities, it's a journey. It's not a destination.
I like that.
Yeah, it's about embracing change, adapting to challenges, constantly learning and evolving.
And it's about working together.
Yes.
You can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone.
So for all those listeners out there who are feeling inspired and want to get started, what would you recommend?
Check out Roots of Resilience. It's a fantastic resource. It's got all those practical tools, inspiring examples. It's really a roadmap for creating those thriving communities.
That's great. And remember, everyone, change starts locally.
It does.
Even those small actions can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
And for everyone listening out there, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.